Right, we'll get started, everybody. Thank you for coming. And good afternoon. It's 1:30. My name is Nicole Bond, and I'm going to be I'm going to be moderating today's marketing and media event, Moonshots, Maps, and How We Might Be. Mark the move from As It Could Be. I'm very excited to introduce our guest speaker today, Stacy Neier. Dr. Stacy Neier began teaching in the Department of Marketing for the Quinlan School of Business in 2008. Her professional background includes roles in marketing research and consumer insights for Gap Inc. and Euromonitor International. Accordingly, her classes focus on marketing research as an essential tool to drive effective marketing strategies. She also teaches fundamentals of marketing, consumer behavior, retailing management, and micro-enterprise consulting. Each course offers opportunities to engage in the Chicagoland business community. She'll be presenting today. It's going to be super interactive, so please use that chat box. Ask questions, answer questions. We're super excited to have you here. Stacy's amazing, and you can go ahead and get started, Stacy.
Oh, Nicole, thank you so much. Oh my gosh, Jonathan Lee is in the chat box. Oh, I am so grateful to spend this time. Nicole, thank you so much for that introduction. And thanks for being the co-pilot, not only for me, but for countless presentations throughout the week. So I am so grateful to have you here with us. And thank you all so much. It looks like, can you guys hear me okay? I think maybe, hi, Avery. I don't know if you can hear me. Maybe now. I hope so. So already we're being super interactive, which is really awesome. So I will have Nicole move the first slide, and let's see. You can hear me, Katie? Okay. Nicole, I will be the first to say I do not see the slide.
You don't see I Love Chicago?
I don't.
Oh no. Okay, that's all right. Let me stop sharing. I'll reshare, and that will probably fix it. Give me 1 second.
Thanks, Nicole. But you guys, hi, Katie and Jonathan and Avery. Oh my goodness, you guys are too good. Hi, Brian. I know we have not met yet, but I hope you're doing well. Oh, now I see it.
Perfect.
Okay, awesome. Okay, woo! Take two. I love a good rewind. So, Nicole, thank you so much. So we'll see what we can do here with everyone. And yes, I love Chicago. So to be a part of Chicago Techstars Startup Week is really such an incredible, energized moment within this spring. So I'm very starstruck by our Techstars. And I love Chicago. I love that we have this entrepreneurial fire that really does underscore so much of the activity that we have in our heads and in our hearts. And I'm really excited that we can put some hands-on, I hope, action around design thinking as it relates to moonshots and mapping and how might we question. So I want to get started with something else I love. So Nicole, do you know what else I love? Oh, one more slide. I love that for other slide too, but this next slide, I love Loyola Chicago. I know we've got some Ramblers in the room today, so definitely show some Rambler love and some Rambler pride. I love Loyola Chicago, and I love it even when we are not necessarily in a basketball tournament that the whole country is talking about. So I do love Loyola. I have been with Loyola now full-time for almost 13 years, and what I really find that I love the most about Loyola is our ability to really take marketing as a discipline, as a focus, as a concentration that sometimes has a bit of an identity crisis. And we can take it and create a much more meaningful space to make impact in society. Oftentimes marketers are sometimes at a crossfire with this identity of we produce a lot of stuff that's not sustainable and nobody really needs it. We at Loyola really have a different approach to marketing, and I hope to share some of that with you today. I think the longer that I'm at Loyola, the more anti-expert I actually get. In other words, the more I'm there, the longer I'm there, the more questions I have about a lot of unknowns that are really impacting society. And so that's really a part of how we're here today talking about design thinking and how that overlaps so much with what Techstars are doing in order to mark a move from as is to could be. So something else that has really gripped my heart, and I want Nicole to move into the next Slide, yes. So something else that's really gripped my head and my heart is this idea of the anniversary effect. And I don't know if people have heard about the anniversary effect. This is something that really has gripped, in particular this past week, recognizing that we have hit the 1-year anniversary of this pandemic. This headline from Fast Company really struck me last week. It was just a week ago that this was published, that you are not the person you were before the pandemic. Katie Borman, I miss you so much, big time. You are not the person you were. And I really believe that this quote is calling us to really decalcify our thinking. We can now have permission and take the license to rethink our approach to really the world's greatest challenges. Avery, I'm so glad you're hearing. Perfect. Hello, hello. So I really think that this idea that humanity is on a deadline is in some ways kind of paradoxical to that screenshot from a Daniel Pink tweet, a quote that he gave, that a year from now, we may have wished for something different, which I'd love to hear from you guys in the chat box. Which of the quotes stands out more for you? The one from Joe or the one from Daniel? What do you guys think? The top one or the bottom one? I'd love to know. You can even just put 1 for the top one or 2 for the bottom one. Bottom, Katie, bottom, yeah. Number 2, Avery. Okay, so the bottom one, Nicole. Okay. You guys, good. I almost didn't put that in. And if you want to say maybe what that means to you, feel free to chat it in. I really want us to take this moment in our time that we are so grateful to spend together to recognize how different a year from now could actually be. Yes, seize the day, Jonathan, and no one does that better than you. I love it. Yeah, it really does kind of fire you up. And that's where this anniversary effect, like I said, has really gripped my mind. It has fortified what we can do in terms of anniversary this time next year, 365 days from now. So I want us to think about that, given we are in such a special time and a special space right now as we talk about these concepts and design thinking. So here's another quote, and I'd love for Nicole to show us this next quote that really got my head and heart thinking. This is the quote. So we can't cheer on our ramblers in this time of March Madness without acknowledging a moonshot taker, a rule breaker, Sister Jean. And this is one of her quotes that really stands out for me, as well as a call to action, like Avery's saying in the box. I never dreamed we'd get as far as we did. And so if that bottom quote from Daniel Pink, although he cited somebody else, so the Daniel Pink tweet, I should say, if that really is connecting with you, think about what it means within our Rambler context. And before we really go into the way that we're going to map out our time together today, did anyone hear just earlier today the new statistic about the Sister Jean bobblehead? Did anyone hear that? It came out just today. Yes, here, I'll put it in the chat box. There you have it. Amazing. So I cue you up with this call to action. It's like our own little pep rally, you guys. I cue you up. I cue you up with this because you too may never dream that you get as far as we did. And as we move from basketballs and this kind of Cinderella story into moonshots and tell our own story, I want you guys to keep that in mind, that it's not just aspirational, but this really is an ideology that we can approach our business professions with, as well as our general approach to tackling the world's grandest challenges. So what we're going to do, and let's spend our time thinking about how we're hardwired for stories. Let's try to tell a story today. Hi, Ralph. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for being here. So we're hardwired for stories. We know that. So in our time together today, and obviously let's be as interactive as possible. Definitely chat in ideas, questions, anything you guys want into the chat box. I've got a lot of links for you as well. We'll kind of walk our story through a beginning, a middle, and an end, recognizing we are hardwired for that type of flow. So first, we're going to talk about how do we really take a moonshot mindset? What does that mean? It sounds pretty good. I think Sister Jean is already on her own moonshot, so we can certainly follow her lead, but let's get into a bit more of the science and the thinking behind that. Then in the middle, I'm going to ask you to break some rules. already see Sister Jean is breaking some rules. We already see the Ramblers are typically in this basketball tournament and they are not always expected to be there. I've already said I actually think I'm becoming more of an anti-expert the longer I stay at Loyola. And so all of those things are ways to break rules. But how do we map that out and really start to de-risk some of the uncertainty there? And so we'll end our story with how might we? HMW. We know that as marketers in particular, we love acronyms. So here's another one for you. And I want us to feel very comfortable with this how might we concept is very uncertain. It is a cliffhanger. There's a bit of a spoiler alert that we may not have any easy answers, and that is part of what we can consider a moonshot moment. So we'll sort of flow our story through this beginning, middle, and end, moonshots, maps, and how might we, if that sounds good to everybody. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about some moonshots that are happening. So a moonshot, when you think about what a moonshot is, let me give you guys a definition that I really rally behind. So it's what you're striving to change. It's what grips your head and your heart, which I've already mentioned a few times. It's that moment where you recognize that there is an optimism for doing something in a novel way that will absolutely be better than what you might have planned for. You're breaking the status quo. You're really taking on innovation with a human-centered approach. Now, all of that sounds, I think, fairly interesting and fairly relevant, but how do you actually do it? That's where we want to really start to set our mind at the beginning of our story. And so there are literal moonshots happening everywhere we look. I got pretty excited about the Mars rover landing. How did you guys feel with the Mars rover landing? Was that a headline that people were following? I very rarely follow anything in the real natural sciences, but I thought that was a real celebratory moment for us in what was a pretty bleak winter. So you did watch it live, Nicole? That's awesome. Okay. So when you think about that Mars rover, I would argue that that is a way to dent the universe, to really aim so high with a challenge that was sustained over a long term. But we saw that happen. We saw a dent put in the universe just this year, even though this year is already feeling a little challenging. So I want you to really think about the signals that those sort of challenges bring up to you, how you are embracing them, how you are accepting them, and how you're moving forward on those calls to action that those other quotes were already bringing to us. So where I really love, and I've got this citation, this Verrule for 2020. This is a book that really does talk even more about moonshots and how you can dent the universe. So as we think about the moon and where our symbolic moon is, I think often in marketing, we are trying, like I already mentioned, we're trying not to overproduce. We're trying not to put so many terrible products that no one demands into the marketplace. And yet that is the status quo. Those are the default settings we have to break. So I have a little moon-shaped sustainable development goals graph there from the UN. And this is something where if you are not familiar with it yet, yes, Jonathan, exactly. You know those stars, the starstruck emoji that I put up there. Absolutely true. This, the Sustainable Development Goals, these are 17 different areas that touch every part of humanity. These are really the areas that marketers need to start identifying and understanding the impact that our novel product development can take on. And here's the thing, those, if you click into that link and you see those 17 goals, although I imagine some people are familiar with those goals, you might have heard of the 8 principles too, right? So there's principles that are attached to that. I wish we had more time to talk about each of them, but my point here is that we have to start breaking the default settings around making products to put into the marketplace and work backwards and ask, what is the consumer actually needing in terms of these sustainable goals? Oh, Avery, awesome. Good. That's so exciting. If you have any ideas on any of them, please share them in the chat box. That's fabulous. So we want to, again, put the consumer back in the center. And that's the definition of marketing. It's consumer centric. So I want you to think about that. Yes, so my moonshot, thank you, Nicole. My moonshot really is to bring design to business education. And so as we go through this, I have been inspired by the time becoming this anti-expert at Loyola. To the left, you can see my favorite logo from Loyola. It is our micro enterprise course logo. Ralph knows this one very well. I spent 5 years teaching this course, which has been offered for 30 years. We always address the needs of underserved business owners, those business owners who didn't have a business acumen, and we were able to develop full-scale business plans. Thank you, Ralph. I love Incubate, one of the Loyola Limited Ventures. In 2014, Katie Borman in this room was a part of the original group that actually branded and ideated and prototyped that Loyola Limited brand. Yes, 2014. So what my moonshot is bringing experiential learning into the design space, because it's in some ways already there. The headlines that you see in the middle and to the right, design is typically left out of business schools, and yet companies like McKinsey put out annual reports that proclaim the value of design in business. And so my moonshot is to really bring design education in the form of experiential learning to marketing education, where we really have a chance to dent the universe. So that's my moonshot. If you guys want to add in your moonshots, by all means, feel free, chat them into the chat box. But otherwise, let's go ahead and figure out a little bit more about how we do this. So what do we need to do to make moonshots? So the idea here, and Nicole, I missed my cue. And we will figure out, how do we do this? How do we make moonshots? One of the core ingredients that I believe is backcasting. Now, design thinking is a concept that many are probably familiar with. There are many schools of thought on design thinking. There was another Techstars event earlier this week about design thinking. Katie Borman, I heard CNR Research just did a design thinking workshop. If that is true. Yay, yeah, so it's out there. So lots of different ways to think about design thinking. My approach here is that we need to backcast. We actually, instead of forecasting, instead of looking ahead and kind of missing the mark in this moment, we actually need to take our vision and match it to our resources in order to move forward. So this idea of backcasting is really, I think, interesting and fairly unique to design thinking. Now, I define design thinking here, and you can see really a traditional flow chart of this various steps of design thinking. Our definition here is grounded in needs finding, empathy, innovation, human-centered, relationship design. I'd love to know from the room and in the chat box, which of these which of the orange words stand out the most to you? Which one really is calling your name? If you could only pick one word, what do you guys think? What would be, okay, so we've got empathy, human-centered, need finding, yeah, and then relationship. Okay, so we've got a little bit of everything. Okay, and that's going to inform some of these next slides as well. The empathy piece, I think empathy got 2. So Ralph and Jonathan. Okay. So I think and you guys will like a few slides from here. You guys are going to appreciate this, I think. I think what we really need to ask, again, especially as we see those major wicked problems, those grand challenges in the 17 development goals, we need to really ask, whose needs are we finding? Whose needs are we actually empathizing with? So that becomes really important. This relationship design, too, also kind of softens the edge on how we typically look at, for example, research participants as very clinical, that they are are our subjects. They are human beings. Even the way we call consumers and customers what we do, they're also human. So we need to be that more human-centric and, as Katie is saying, that more relationship-oriented. So I definitely want us to think about really unpacking this idea of thinking. So if we understand the design is really, in many ways, the outcome, the product that comes from this process, let's take a step back at the thinking. So I want us to recognize this concept of divergent and convergent thinking. Have people seen the fly and the bee metaphor before? Has anyone seen this before? I love it because I would have thought I wanted to be a bee. Be the bee. It just seems more vaguely. Okay. Thank you, Jonathan. So you want to think about this in ways of what the fly does to approach its environment and what the bee does to approach its environment. So, and this is representative, it's symbolic of divergent and convergent thinking. So a bee is going to buzz all over the place, lots of different directions, so many different touch points, just buzzing around wherever its environment is, and quite frankly, annoying anyone who is around it. Would you say that? Nobody likes to have a swarm of flies around them, but yet those flies are onto something. Again, they're buzzing around, and in the spirit of thinking, those flies are actually creating choices. They are going every single direction that they possibly can. Compare that with a bee. A bee beelines. It knows exactly what it wants to sting. It just goes for its target, ignoring all of the options that might have been buzzing around it. And so this becomes, as I mentioned, symbolic of how we are divergent thinkers or how we are convergent thinkers. Are we actually making choices, challenging assumptions to get us from point A to the moon, or are we beelining straight for what we think the solution is and showing up with an opportunity that doesn't actually match up? It's not viable, it's not feasible. So really think about the way that the fly operates and the bee operates. And that underscore thinking is going to be extremely helpful to actually accept what is uncertain. So these are two different images here. The one on the left really poses, again, kind of where the fly and the bee sit in terms of how do we create all of this momentum to get to the moon. So do you thrive in terms of generating options, or do you thrive in making choices? The big idea here is you do need to do both. We cannot always be flies. We ultimately need to beeline to the target, but we're breaking the default setting here. We're breaking the rule because we typically just go straight for what we assume the solution is without adequately looking outside of that particular perspective. So that's what we'll talk about next when we talk about mapping. But I really want everyone to recognize this idea of we owe it to ourselves and to everybody that we serve to actually generate choices, to be a fly, to take that moment. And what we typically don't do is actually accept the uncertainty. Actually, you know what, Nicole, I'll have you go back one. Thank you. I know, that was me. That was totally me. What we typically don't accept is the uncertainty is a part of success, right? So how many times do you see a job application or your professors or your colleagues talk about critical thinking? What does that even mean? Yeah, we can evaluate stuff we already know, but divergent and convergent thinking is much more action oriented. I can more clearly visualize how intangible the thinking is if I put it in these terms. And it helps me to accept uncertainty as a success. So the other piece of this is relationship. And I love that relationship was mentioned when I asked who thought what. So Katie, this one's for you. But Jonathan Lee from Salesforce, this one's also for you. To me, Salesforce not only dents the universe, but it fixes the universe. So they really have the grip on what it takes to design for relationships. We know humanity is on a deadline from those earlier quotes, but we can't have humanity on a deadline without trust and relationships. So I want to accentuate how important the relationship piece here is to taking our moonshots. It's a team sport. We can't do it on our own. So let's see how Salesforce is moving fast and fixing things. In other words, putting a dent in the universe. So I think we can play this quick clip.
Move fast and break things. Remember how good that used to sound? For a while there, it seemed like technology was the answer to everything, and that business would drive us all forward. But it's time we took a look around. All around. Not just at the rooms where we sit, or the offices where we work, or the towns where we live, but all around. And ask ourselves if maybe we've broken enough. How much longer can we continue to put the few ahead of the many? How much longer can we proceed with business as usual? Let's keep moving fast. But instead of breaking things, let's find a way to fix them. Let's bring doing well and doing good together. Let's bring CEOs and NGOs together. Let's bring equal work and equal pay together. Tech and trust. Shareholders and stakeholders. C-level and C-level. Access and success. Let's bring value and values together. The thing is, technology really does have the power to lift us all, but only if we design it for everyone. And business really can drive us all forward, but only if we agree to hold ourselves to a higher standard. It's time for a new era of business, one that works for everyone. Let's build it together. Are you with us?
I'm with them. I am without a doubt with them. So I really do appreciate this concept of bringing together a relationship and design. And to me, Salesforce does it better than anyone. So, and I think it's time to break some rules. I think it's time to break some rules. We're seeing Salesforce break some rules. So let's be that yellow tree in the midst of all the green. This is a rally cry for rule breakers and relationship designers. So let's go ahead and move fast and fix some things. Maps coming alive, different forms, which we're going to see on the next slide. There. Oh, actually, yes, this is I forgot this video was coming up next, I admit. So I want you guys to recognize as well, and a couple of you actually added empathy into the chat box too. I want us to think through what empathy does in terms of building those relationships that, for example, Salesforce is designing. Have people heard about Empathy Week? I know we're in Techstars Chicago Startup Week, but do people know about Empathy Week? Is this anything that anyone's heard of before? Yeah, so you guys, it just finished. So I do want to show a little clip of this as well, really thinking about how, in terms of empathy, it connects back in some ways, it humanizes those development goals from, of course, the UN. So let's take a look at this as we narrow into how we're going to map out some of this empathy. And this is just a brief clip.
You just feel like in order to be special, you have to be like everyone else, and you don't really actually realize what makes you unique as a person is what makes you special.
What I want to heal and help fix, all of it resonates with blackness to me, all of it.
I'm feeling I didn't tell anybody that like I'm an immigrant, like I don't have these things.
I feel like I can give mental health a little bit of a kick.
I don't want to die here. And I was asking God, please help me.
So thank you, Nicole, for that. That, to me, it really struck me that we are building this empathy generation. What we just heard were, very micro excerpts, but those stories were really those people's moonshots. And it's up to us as designers and marketers and entrepreneurs and humans to help map out a path for those moonshots that can put everyone on a route to success by de-risking the assumptions we bring with us. So let's go ahead. We eventually need to kind of get into the mapping of this. So we're kind of moving from divergent into convergent thinking. So let's go ahead and figure out how we do some mapping. So I've got two types of maps that I want us to take a look at. And before we look at the map, this is a rally cry to make sure we stay empathetic in our approach to this. I love that IBM describes this little poster that you are not your user. This speaks loud and clear to me. I know it is a very cliche statement to say, walk a day in someone else's shoes, and that does help us crystallize and visualize, I think, what it can be to be empathetic. But this, for me, as a marketer, really reminds me to break the mirror. If I am looking at myself and marketing to my own needs, I am not being empathetic. I am producing more stuff that no one else is demanding. So to really put it into place, yeah, Avery, that one was for you. To really put it into place, we need to recognize that you are not your user. That's empathy. And that can help us map out how we get from as is to what could be. So let's go ahead and see what an empathy map might look like. So we're still in this divergent thinking. So when you start empathy mapping based on what your entrepreneurial venture or project requires, empathy mapping is oftentimes overlooked. It really is one of those tools that could help save so much time if we started from a place of human-centric relationship design. We have to stay very divergent. We have to be that buzzy fly, though, because if we beeline too close, too early, we probably are just looking at our own reflection of what we need. So these are two maps that give the example of a very simple grid that can help you map out how a ultimate human that you can draw in the middle, you can see that little emoji smiley face is labeled user. I would actually represent that as human. So kind of put some humanity behind that. But you want to map out what that user, that human thinks, what that person feels, says, and does. And a lot of empathy maps do those four quadrants. What, again, they think, they feel, they say, and they do. What I love about some of the people who have been challenging empathy mapping and its value, we've actually added pains and gains to this empathy map as well. So where do you feel that friction? Where is your heart gripping with just pure pain? And where are there some gains? Where is there some lightness? Where is there some fun, especially in this incredible year that we've all faced together? So empathy mapping really can help map where you feel that you are not your user. It needs to be divergent. All ideas are good. It might feel like this bad idea brainstorm, and that's how you know you're actually doing it in a way that is effective, that you're uncertain about all of these different things, and that uncertainty is actually a mark of success. So thinking about the empathy map, the image on the right shows what the map can actually look like if you are a fly diverging in all of these different directions. You're ultimately trying to cluster together different themes, different concepts, different topics that have come together as a pattern. And so then we can start to really figure out, okay, what is the issue that really is at the core of this person's humanity? How can our entrepreneurial venture actually support that human's ultimate needs? So there's where the empathy comes into play. I wish we could map out some empathy here. I will say there's a link in the chat box. This is the link to the citation for these examples that I'm sharing. But I want you guys to really think too, that, again, knowing that uncertainty is a real, actually, let me give you, that link is for the next slide. Haha. there's some uncertainty. This link is for this slide. But I want you guys to think about when we map things out, oftentimes you're filling in a Mad Lib. Do you guys remember Mad Libs? The fill in the blank? Do you guys remember those? It can look so fun, right? So and that's where the uncertainty comes into play. But often we don't celebrate the uncertainty. Yes. So the Mad Lib might be, oh, thanks, Sarah Brinks. Thanks for being here. The Mad Lib might be something like, we met, fill in the blank, who needs, fill in the blank, because. Or maybe you're making a statement like, this human needs to do what? Because. It's opening up these opportunities of complete uncertainty to fill in with empathy, again, because you've already kind of checked yourself that you are not your user. So maps like this can really help us with divergent thinking. And another form of map that can help us with convergent thinking, so we eventually need to be the B, right? We eventually need to get to a point where we can create this outcome, where we can prototype and test and put something into the marketplace in whatever capacity your business plan is trying to accomplish. So we eventually get to be the B. And again, I will give you guys this link. This is a double link, but this is the link. I erroneously clicked it into it and put it in the chat, but it's going to this map. This is where we really need to start mapping out our assumptions. And this, again, is an activity that can help us to de-risk where we are uncertain. A lot of times these moonshots can feel like you're almost coming up with these science fiction fantasy outcomes. We ultimately do need to converge and choose from amongst all of those choices. But what we don't want to do is make the wrong choice. That's something that everybody is going to really feel like there's some risk around. So when you do an assumption map like this, it really helps you to see, okay, what is important, and where is our unknown? And I think that combination really is where kind of the innovation bells start to go off, that where we see something, the need in the marketplace based on empathy mapping, we can match that with our uncertainty. And that's where no one else is competing. That's where we can really get these breakthrough moments that actually have capacity to create a more optimistic, hopeful world on behalf of society. So this is that beeline moment when we can do some assumption mapping. I will also be the first to say, I know I mentioned there's lots of schools of thought in terms of design thinking. Some people are not a big fan of assumption maps. So I've seen some recent argument around calling an assumption map a priority map, which I like. I do actually think that is maybe a more accurate name for it. How do we prioritize all these buzzy, fly-worthy ideas and beeline to really the priority? And I think reprioritizing again and refortifying is what we need to be doing at this time. How do we think again? How do we unthink where we've been? And I think going towards this leap of faith assumptions with some empathy can help us get there. But again, we have to map it out. Oftentimes we skip the mapping part. So as we continue to map, I really encourage you guys to look for that sweet spot, because what we're getting at here is what the ultimate question is. So as we sort of round through our story and get to the ending around what might be, what could be our outcome, there's going to be a question. And that question really is the catalyst for what is to come. So we've got our beeline made, but we need to ground it in a question. So if you are really buying into the moonshot mindset and you're willing to break some rules by mapping things out first, then I would argue that you're also willing to ask what we could do. In other words, let's avoid what we should do. Put the spreadsheets away, put the rational thought away. What could we do here? And when we can back it up with some of the mapping we just did, we actually get to a place that we've identified a grand challenge that matters, that's worth the moonshot. So when you think about what you could do, I really encourage you guys to think about these three questions. Let me get these into the chat box. Yes, Jonathan, they exist without a doubt. Without a doubt, they do. And I think that's where, again, how do we ultimately know that the opportunity that exists is worth moonshotting, right? There's a lot of risks. There's a lot of unreliability that could come from it. We don't like being in places of uncertainty unless we all come together and say uncertainty is what we're going for. And that's a cultural change that I think we're up for. So when you think about asking what could you do, you ultimately come into those 3 questions that I just put into the chat box, right? What's the best case? And what's holding me back? What am I afraid of? I want you guys to also think about this acronym, which, for those of you in the room who know me, you do know I love fashion. So it is not Diane von Furstenberg or Dion von Furstenberg. You want to be desirable, feasible, and viable, or desirable, viable, and feasible. Those 3 qualities help you say that, yeah, you know what, this how might we question is actually a moonshot, that I can have a viable business, it's feasible to make happen, and most importantly, it's desirable because of the relationships of empathy that are possible. So desirability, viability, and feasibility are key to this. And let's look a little bit more into some examples of how might we question. So that's kind of the framework. Chicago examples are boundless. And this is one that I took from IDEO. So you guys can see the reference there. It's a screenshot, but the idea here is you want to be able to narrow down that grand challenge that is really gripping your heart. You want to narrow it down into the right question. It can't be too broad, like the question you see on the left. It can't be too narrow. We can't squeeze anyone out. We need to be as universal and give as many possibilities as we can. There needs to be a variety. It's got to be just right. That just right, again, is that sweet spot where impactful innovation can happen. It's the sweet spot that shows you diverged to converge. You were the fly and then you were the bee. So, oh, it looks like maybe someone's not seeing the slides in advance. I wonder, we will get on that. Thank you, Nicole. Yeah, we'll see. We've got only a few more slides to go, but I appreciate you saying that. So something to think about. And while Nicole, my awesome co-pilot, is working through that, here are some qualities that I really find helpful around how might we questions. I know I'm doing so many clicks for you guys. I know it's kind of a rowdy chat box in that way, but I hope, okay, slides are back. I hope everyone can see those. Please let us know if you can't. But something to think about, really the essence of the how might we question. How shows there are multiple pathways, and that's what we want. We want the variety. We want the many different possibilities that we have mapped out and that we have diverged, right? So the how is really essential. The might is really where the innovation comes through. That's the uncertainty. That's the unknown. That's where we are unsure about what could happen, but something might happen. And I love the W in HMW. How might we? It brings in, it invites humanity. It invites we as a team, as a collaboration, as a cohort of difference makers who are ready to mark the move. So how might we? And there are more traits for how might we questions in the links that I've shared there. So let's see again, maybe what a few other Chicagoans did. So what are some other examples? And yeah, let's see these. I loved this example that came out from Lori Lightfoot. This was back in August, actually. So if you look at that screenshot, I grabbed it from a Twitter archive. And this was such a moment, a design moment for our city, when the mayor actually said, we need your moonshots. We need your mapping. We need your hearts to look at these how might we's. We actually commissioned as a city IDEO, arguably the largest design organization in the world, to be a part of this. And OpenIDO, if people have not seen that, it is really a space where you can contribute to many different IDEO projects, OpenIDO. So our dining institutions, our dining industry, were a part of the entire OpenIDO. We approached our challenge in Chicago to fix things, to dent our restaurant universe, and really believe in, yeah, so cool. Thanks, Nicole. Yeah, it's such a great idea, right? The simplicity. And you could say it's got some crowdsourcing feel to it, of course, but there really is this moment of let's come together and moonshot an industry that we all cherish so deeply. So very cool that Chicago actually worked through some design thinking on an industry that touches the lives of all of us, arguably. And let's see some other Chicagoans who are ready to fix some things, because that was a pretty large scale Chicago moment. But we've got Chicagoans who do Techstars, startup, really moonshot moments throughout the world, even when we are in a pandemic. So some people may have been to Helix Chicago, had another session earlier, I think it was yesterday, but Helix Chicago, for anyone who doesn't know, is a entrepreneurial job training program that doubles through a living lab as a coffee shop. So Helix Chicago really does bring education and job training. It actually is very similar to the Loyola Limited business portfolio that is sponsoring Chicago Techstars this week. So Helix Chicago is definitely a rule breaker who took a moonshot, and it is happening in Chicago. So I also want to acknowledge Common Space Collective. So Common Space Collective was started nearly a year ago now. So this happened during the pandemic. And ultimately, two of the two founders said that space is going to mean something totally new, totally new. Yes, I bet Helix rocked it. Thank you, Nicole. I love them. Common Space Collective wanted to do something totally new with space, recognizing space means something different today than it did for any of us before this all started. There's a common space in terms of how do we actually use these open spaces even during these pandemics. So Common Space Collective is actually on a mission to make community is the new amenity. So I put their hashtag in the chat box, and I would encourage you guys to follow Common Space Collective. And Topic Insight, Topic Insight. So Ralph and Avery are both in this room from Topic Insight, and I wish they had audio because they would be the ones that could absolutely blow our moonshot minds with what they've been working on. But Topic Insight really is on, let me put this in the chat box. So I love that Topic. My favorite, you guys can tell I love acronyms and alliteration, I'm sure, but Topic is to purposefully inspire change. And what Topic is doing is trying to ultimately create content that individuals can read and take action on. And that's where we have so many opportunities for these moonshot moments to bring the thought leadership from many different countries through Topic to really instigate how we can purposefully inspire change in our actions. And so Ralph and Avery, I'm so proud of you guys. Thanks for being here as a part of Techstars. I would like to say this slide too, if it's Chicagoans who have moved fast and fixed things, I gotta say, these are all Rambler rule breakers. These are all Loyolans who are really in the community making a change for the society they want to see. They want to moonshot and map out and always ask uncertain questions. So yes, go Blurs, go Blurs. And with that, I know we are coming to an end of our story. And so I want everyone to think about, yes, Avery, thank you so much for that. Please sign up for their incredible newsletter. Follow them on social media within LinkedIn, of course, and Twitter and Instagram. Yes, and Common Space Collective, thank you. And Helix, thank you guys. What a chat box. I love a good chat box. So it really comes down to these three things. You guys can see these very simple summaries, but the moonshot mindset brings dignity to the humble fly. Where in this COVID world did you think I would encourage you to be a fly and not a bee? But really think about the fly. Create choices. Don't sell yourself short by beelining to a single targeted option when it could just miss the mark completely. We want to make a move. We want to mark the move, not miss it. The empathetic rule breaker is always going to map out human-centered relationships. Where are you asking yourself if you are actually identifying as your user and backing out of that? Where are you challenging assumptions for what's important and unknown and making that priority as the sweet spot for impactful innovation? That's where you're going to make your mark. And then, of course, this how might we question. You've got to signal that you're marking a move in order to actually give more uncertainty out there. There's no easy answer. It's going to end in a question. And the more that you can embrace that, I really believe your head and your heart and your hands are going to create this strategy of beauty where there's resolution in the uncertainty, that you have shown that life actually has better options and you are breaking the rules to help us all get there. So, or I should say, and I'd love to offer these final resources. So if you are ready to be a rule breaker and you are ready to get restless, I will encourage everyone to take a look at Salesforce. Jonathan Lee is a Salesforce person in this room. Salesforce has some incredible training that is open. It's an open platform. It's on their training tool called Trailhead. They have a lot of design. Yay! Jonathan, oh yeah, put it in there. Yeah, webinars for sure. With Salesforce, they actually have a fundamentals course as well. That is a 12-week program. It is free. So Salesforce is so generous with how it really approaches relationship design, and it wants to build the next generation of designers who understand where your moonshots are. So I encourage you to do that. IBM also has an enterprise design course. Thank you, Jonathan. And Creative Confidence is a podcast. If you need a new podcast for all the podcast enthusiasts, I really encourage you to take a look at those as well. So those are a few resources for restless rule breakers that you just want more. I love too that the enterprise design thinking by IBM and then Trailhead, you do get credentials that you can put on LinkedIn, you can put on your resume. So those are really, I think, very worthwhile, particularly recognizing that it's high quality content and it is free. And a few more slides. I love gratitude too. I know I said I love Chicago and I love Loyola Ramblers, but I also love gratitude. I am so grateful for the gift of your time. It is so meaningful that you spent a few moments on this Thursday afternoon to share thank you, Jonathan, to share your excitement around how we really can make our world a moonshot space for asking lots of questions that don't always get easy answers. So I'm so grateful. I'm grateful to Nicole. Big round of applause for doing the back end of Hopin. Hopin is not an easy platform. And so she has done an incredible job for me and for many others. So I thank her. I thank Loyola Limited. I thank Techstars. Thank you for all of the support and for everyone who put this on. Thank you all for in the chat box. I've got one more. One more. Thank you, Nay. I also love reading. So in the spirit of breaking some rules, if you do want to connect with me, I'm easy to find on LinkedIn and Twitter, but I love reading. I love Medium and I love Goodreads. So I thought this would be a nice way to kind of showcase another space to connect. So if you guys want to follow me or join me on Medium and Goodreads, that's where a lot of the kind of design conversations happen. I am getting more active on these, and so this audience will help inspire me to take my moonshot and be even more active. One final, I spend a lot of time also in Slack channels. Some of you know that. I really encourage people to take a look at the Business of Purpose. That was kind of the shout out to the Sustainable Development Goals. Really some interesting content there. Lots of entrepreneurial minded people in a Slack community. So that is another space. Let's break some rules beyond the usual social media. And if you want to connect, you can find me there. So thank you all so much. I'm grateful for your time. And I just wish we were all together in person. I really do appreciate it, everyone.
Stacy, thank you so much. It was a blessing to work with you, and you are an amazing host, so thank you. I hope our audience gets a chance to use what they learned today. You've been awesome with sending us links. I've opened up all the links that you sent, and I have them all in tabs, so I'm excited to check them all out.
And there's so many tabs.
I love it. And thank you everybody for attending our event. You were a wonderful audience. We would love if you shared your feedback with us or how much you loved this. If you'll share us on social media, we're on Facebook and Instagram. Tag us at Chicago Startup Week and let us know what you thought. And then something that's starting right now in the Hop-In platform is an event called Chicago Strong, a panel on the ups and downs of the Chicago startup in a pandemic. You guys are really creative thinkers and great. You have great taste if you showed up to this event, so I think you'll love the next one. So take a little bit of a break, but go and check them out. And Stacy, thank you so much.
Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, guys. I'll talk to everyone soon.
Yep, I will stay here until you guys trickle out, but you guys have an awesome rest of your Thursday and a good startup week.
Thank you all. Happy Thursday. Thank you, Ralph. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Jonathan. Thank you, Avery. Thank you so much. Oh, Ryan. Hi, Ryan. I didn't know you were here. Hi, Ryan. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to sign off. See you guys.
Should I sign off too then? Yeah.
Yep, you're all good.
Okay. I'll open Teams. I'll chat you, okay? Thank you.